Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this first session with a cup of tea with Sam. However, today I've decided to go with the Americans' favourite coffee. So I've had a few questions from some of you in regards to our journey that we've been going through the last couple of months. You know, how tough has it been? What are you missing from home? You know, what's the weather like? What's the petrol costs? What's the food shopping? And I noticed that there's not much out there in terms of vlogs that's kind of going through what we're going through, and also sharing with you our experience, because it hasn't always been easy. There's been days, trust me, I've wanted to get on that plane and come back to England. But there's been days I'm like, wow, this is an amazing experience. So I just wanted to give a bit of a brief overview of what we've experienced since arriving in January. So as some of you may or may not know, my husband is actually Floridian. We met back in 2005, a long time ago, when I was working here in the US on an internship. So I've been over on a J1 and I understand how the visa system works. But we've lived in the UK for 14 years. And I think during, lockdown, during the COVID times, I think my husband just suddenly realized like he wanted to go back to Florida, especially as you kind of saw, rightly or wrongly, they were just getting on with things and just getting on with life. And as we all know, COVID was tough. Like, COVID was really hard. That was a really hard time for everybody, and it's still ongoing. You know, we're still talking about it. Not so much in Florida. People don't talk about it in Florida as much. It's not really brought up in conversation too much, which was a little bit strange for me to start with, because I've been so, COVID, our whole lives been COVID, and here it was very much like, oh yeah, okay. They didn't have any, protocols about if you they'd tell you to self-isolate, but there was no track or trace system. There was nothing like that. They didn't have the infrastructure to support it. So that was a bit of a culture shock when we first came over. And obviously I was always conscious about getting too close to people, but people here like to invade your space a little bit more. So that was all very new to us. So that was very different. The way they view COVID is very different. And because New York was very different, and so was California in their views and things. So I can only really comment on what I've experienced here in Florida. So some of the other things, so shopping, thank goodness they have an Aldi here, Aldi, however you like to say it. The food shopping here is more expensive than England, 100%. There's no getting away from it. So, typically in England, for the three of us, a weekly shop in Aldi, if I had a lot of meat, maybe, would be top 100 quid, which is like, what, $120, $130. Here, I can easily do between $150, $170 for a shop. You go to Publix, over $200, or even Walmart, for instance, over $200, and that's for a weekly shop for the three of us. We do eat a lot of meat. We are meat eaters, but just so you're aware that we're not back in the 80s where it was like, everyone kind of remembers it as being, a pound got you $2. It's not that way now. It's completely the other way. And there's so much development going on in and around Orlando. Everywhere you see, there's more condos going up. So what's happening is there's this almost like this urban rural sprawl, as they call it. So whereas, if you're both working on normal salaries, you can't afford to live, in a house in and around downtown or Winter Park. So people are starting to move out. They're starting to move out to a Vido and a Popcar. So we've got all these new builds and these developments starting to creep up as people start to move out, because it's just become too unaffordable. So for instance, rent, in Winter Park, a 2-bed, 2-bath condo, which is all we're in at the moment, is $1,800. That's around £1,600, £1,500. That's a lot for a condo. That's a lot. So even with you both working, your money is definitely not going as far. So that was a bit of a shock to us, I must admit. And things like, for instance, internet. So internet, 20 quid a month in England. You could shop around, BT or, PlusNet. Here, you don't get a choice for a start. It's very much, the companies will monopolize the market. So like, for instance, it's Spectrum where we live. That was it. That was the only choice we had, was Spectrum. And that was, and it's around $55 a month, and that's just for internet, not for a phone line, not for international calls, just internet. Electric is kind of more the same. I mean, it's probably around about $100 a month we pay for electric. That's kind of more the same, and I know that the prices are going up in the UK. So we have a rental property in the UK, so we are quite, you know, we do keep in tune with what's happening in the UK as well. Petrol, I know people, like, I'm speaking to my mum and my dad and my family in the UK, it's insane over there at the moment, you know, over £100 to fill up your tank. People are moaning here now, but you know, I can fill up our little Chevrolet for $40, you know, which is around, I don't know, 35, 33 pounds. So although people are moaning here, they don't realise actually how cheap it still is here compared to the UK. So I do feel for you guys in the UK who are paying, you know, £100 for a tank of petrol. That is crazy. But like the UK, everything is going up here. You know, inflation is on the rise. We all know, can kind of see the signs of what's coming, because this isn't sustainable. Even for here, it's not sustainable. So that has been, you know, it's been an interesting couple of months of especially what's going on in the world as well. We don't have cable here. So, you know, they don't even, back in the day, they used to include at least cable in your rent. Now that's even extra. So we don't bother with cable, because I find the TV a bit, if I'm honest, the US TV, sorry, to all my Americans, the TV's a bit naff. You know, I really miss like the ITV dramas, for instance. You just don't get that here. So we just have TV with just apps, you know, Netflix, Disney Plus. We download the Sky News if you want to get, you know, more of a global reporting on what's going on in the world. So we watch Sky News in the morning, or we don't, depending on how the mood I'm in, if I don't want to watch the news and get depressed. So I don't necessarily feel that we need cable right now. I don't feel that we watch enough TV, because the weather here is so amazing, and there's no getting away from it. The weather here is amazing, and there's so much more of an outdoors lifestyle. You know, like, you know, if my kid finishes school and we go for a swim in the you know, the condo pool, and it's got loads of kids there, and it's like this real nice community sense, and you just can't do that in England. You know, our days were spent, you know, going from Costa coffee shop because it's cold, you know, and it's raining, whereas here, if it rains, it is torrential, but it's done with. So yeah, the lifestyle was very, very different here, you know, and there's a lot more dining outside. There's, you know, yesterday we went to a place called Baldwin Park, beautiful little area around, I don't know, 15 minutes from downtown Orlando. It's like a development built alongside a lake, full of kind of like yuppies, young families, but everyone was walking, jogging, cycling, skateboarding, and you know, we just grabbed a drink and sat by the lake and watched the world go by. And you just, you know, it's a very different, that is a very different lifestyle. That's something you can't always explain to somebody until they've done it. So that has been a huge plus, you know, just the weather alone. And I know, like, right now, you know, it's cold in England again. It was warm and now it's gone cold again. We have very long winters in England, you know, there's no getting away from it. So yeah, the outdoor lifestyle is great here. And the kids are very active too, with their swimming clubs and their karate and everything else, and their ballet. And I haven't made a huge amount of American friends yet, just because I haven't actually had the opportunity. What I have made is some English friends, which I'm really grateful for. And like any big move, wherever you move abroad, your natural instinct is to be attracted to things that you know, to commonalities, you know. And I found that with joining a few groups, Facebook groups here, and I found some of them were English, and you know, just things like sense of humor. Sense of humor is really different here, you know. Sometimes you have to be a little bit careful what you say to Americans, because sometimes, you know, they can take it the wrong way, you know. And you know, we have a lot of banter, as we call it, in England, and you know, you have to be really careful not to offend sometimes, you know, here. So I find I can relax a little bit more around the English girls, but I'm desperate to make some American friends. And there's an app here actually called Peanut, and it's basically for mums, but it's like, think Tinder but for mums. And it's fantastic. And there's one lady I've been talking to backwards and forth, and we already just can tell like we've got a bit of a connection going on, and we're desperate to meet for a coffee and let our kids have a play and stuff. So yeah, I will get some American friends, but for now I'm just clinging on to my English girlfriends. And we've all got stories to tell, you know. We've all had you know, some of us have been through the COVID times, some of us haven't. So you know, it's been really interesting to share each other's experiences. And also like on the days where you do feel homesick, because you will get homesick, you know, if you do any of these moves abroad, you will get homesick, and you can't always describe what it is you're missing. It's like intangible, but on those days it's really good to like connect and say, hey, do you want to meet for a coffee, do you want to meet with the kids for a run in the park? And because they know how you're feeling, and you almost like you cheer each other up, you know, and you almost like regroup, and they're like, okay, look, you know, that wasn't a great experience I had here, but you know what, look what we have around you. And it's being appreciative of having this opportunity that not everybody either wants to do or has the opportunity to do. So I'm very grateful for that. The next thing I was going to talk to you about was buying a house. So we're actually in the process of buying a home. And oh boy, like, it's so different. The process is complete. There is nothing really similar compared to buying a property in the UK and buying a property in the US. So you definitely need to get yourself a good realtor, which is an estate agent, 100%. Someone, especially in this market, it's so competitive. Condos and homes are going for 20-30 grand over the asking price, and you're getting into bidding wars. Like, it's mental. The market right now is crazy. So for us to win this house, we were up against it. You know, there was 3 of us, you know, up against it, and you have to have a good realtor who knows what speaks to the seller and what's going to give you that edge over the others. So get yourself a good realtor. If you want any good realtors, I give you a name of a couple. Also get yourself a good loan officer. So a loan officer is basically like your mortgage broker. But here they don't tend to call them mortgage brokers, they're loan officers. Again, you need to get somebody as well. If you're coming from a foreign background and you've lived in England and you've got foreign assets, you need to get with somebody who has dealt with that before, because quite often they'll go, yeah, we can do that, you can do that, and then we get halfway down the line and then they're like, oh, you have a property in the UK, oh, hang on. And it's quite evident they don't understand, they don't know, because they're just used to dealing with Americans with their properties in America. So make sure you get a loan officer who is familiar with people who have come from abroad, to save yourself time and all the backwards and forwards. So good realtor, good loan officer, and work as a team. You know, like if the loan officer and the realtor have a good relationship, they will go to fight for you. They'll make sure you get the property that you want. But it's all about strategy here. It's not about how much money you have, how much loan you have. It's all about strategy. So that's the biggest advice I can give you right now, is get you a good realtor and a good loan officer. What else do you need to know? So, banking, the banking system here. Okay, so the bank that we deal with is hugely antiquated. Like, it's like banking back in the 80s. It's really difficult to wire transfer. Like, you wouldn't thought in England we just do it at the click of a button. If they're with HSBC, it don't matter. Like, you can do it quite quickly within 2 hours. Here it can take days, or you have to actually physically go into the bank, sit with a person. You have to talk about it has to then be approved. It's like really antiquated and old school. So make sure you go with a bank that is a lot more technologically advanced in their banking, and they haven't got all this red tape bureaucracy. That was a big shock to us, because we're like, we'll just wire the money, you know, we'll do it online. And they're like, no, you have to go in, you have to speak to somebody, then it has to be signed off, then there's like a $35 honestly, like, it was crazy. And this was just to, you know, send escrow money, which is basically deposit, is a fancy way of saying deposit money. And we nearly lost the property because of this, because we didn't realize how complicated it was to send some money. Like, we had no idea. So definitely make sure you speak with your loan officers before you do anything. And and you have to ask lots of questions. Don't just assume, because sometimes they assume as well that you know, and then you're like, hang on, what's that? And they're like, oh, you didn't know? I'm like, no, I didn't know. So don't always assume. That's another thing. Ask questions. Ask, if you don't understand something, ask why. Sometimes you don't always get the answer, but you really have to educate yourself on this process. Otherwise it can get very overwhelming. Medical. Okay, so medical insurance, I mean, it's a business here. There's no getting away from it. It's great in the sense that, you know, when you get to the doctor's surgery, they're very polite and friendly, and you get seen straight away, and they're very thorough, but also bad. So for instance, I had a pitfall where I've never used private insurance, never had it, and always used NHS. I've never needed it. So I went to a doctor's surgery here, and we had to get our son, they have to have like every kid has to have an annual medical checkup where they take their weight and their height. Anyway, long story short, I went to the doctors, spoke with the receptionist, and she told me how great my medical insurance was. What she failed to check was to tell me that the doctor's practice was out of my insurance company's network. So there I was, I left the doctor's surgery, he had his shots and he got all up to date and he's all good to go. And then all of a sudden a $500 medical bill turned up in my postbox because I had gone out of network. So that was a massive shock. And I was like, oh man, like, you know, that's a lot of money for a kid's annual checkup and a shot. That was it. That's all it was. So that was like a bit of a downer because I thought I'd done everything right. So now I know you have to go speak to the private medical insurance, who will send you a list of who is approved in your area. But then it is a bit of a nightmare because you have to call them all. Sometimes you're on hold for ages. You have to ask if they're taking new patients. Then you have to register. So it's not as straightforward as they make it out. Yesterday I was on the phone to 3 or 4 and I was on hold for like half an hour and just gave up. And then I tried another place. I think I finally registered now. I've got an appointment booked, but I'll just wait till I just want to get the appointment and then I'll turn up and then I'll just get it all sorted. So that is something I'm learning as from, you know, my perspective here from the NHS as compared to private. So always speak to your private health insurance. If you've got any questions, just speak to them, because it can be quite costly. What else do I learn in the last few months? We've got annual passes. So we decided, instead of Christmas presents in December, because we knew we were coming here, we said like no one buys any presents because we can't ship it out. We would like money towards annual passes, and we bought an annual pass for SeaWorld and Aquatica, mainly because, you know, our little one's he's only 4, gonna be turning 5 soon. He doesn't do the big roller coasters and stuff yet, so we didn't really feel it's Universal was worth it for us just yet. And I did SeaWorld and Aquatica is very, very good value for money. I think we paid under $200 for my husband and I, for 2 parks, free parking. I think we have very limited blackout dates. We can go anytime, weekends or whatever. And we felt that was really good value. Plus at the time they were running a promotion. So they call it a preschool card. So if you were a resident of Florida, children 5 years old and under had a free pass. So we immediately took advantage of that. But from looking online now, they're not running that offer anymore. So I believe you have to pay now for under 5s. So we were really lucky. I just went online and saw. So we only paid for 2 annual passes for 2 adults. It saved us like $200. So, you know, we feel that it's worth it. And it's great on those days where you're like, oh, what should we do? Like, oh, let's head to Aquatica for a few hours. And we'll make sure we're there at 10, and or it doesn't matter if you're not there at 10, because we don't really do the big water rides or anything. We do the rapid rivers and the lazy river and the wave machines and the splash pads, and you know, we'll go there for a few hours, and that's in itself like very, very surreal, you know, just spending a few hours at a really great water park, you know. So that's very different to what we were doing living in England, you know, and we lived in Essex and in Suffolk. So and again, it's just down to the weather. That's all it's down to, is the weather, and just having that getting out, you know, for a little bit. The state parks here are absolutely amazing. You know, some of the state parks, like the one we go to, has a splash pad as well. It's got, you know, a nice big jetty where you can sometimes see the turtles. It's got a big playground that's covered. They've got like a pavilion which you could hire for birthday parties. So things like that, you know, you can't describe that to somebody. It's just a different way of living. But I'm seeing my channel grow, which is amazing. We did go to Disney Springs last, what day was it? Sunday. I think it was Sunday. We ate at House of Blues. Wasn't that, loved the atmosphere, but the food and service was a bit naff, to be honest. But we are finding here there are, just like England, I hear there are staff shortages. There are staff shortages in all the restaurants and the bars and hospitality in itself. So it's the same happening here too. And that does have effect on food quality and service. But it was nice to get out. And I met, as some of you may have seen on my Instagram. So if you follow me on Instagram and you'll see some photos. I met Timtracker. So anybody knows, you know, if anyone watches the vloggers in Orlando, Timtracker's like, I think he has the biggest following out of all of them. I was a little bit embarrassed. I don't know why. I was a little bit nervous, but I'm like, oh gosh, I've got to get a picture of them. And they were very nice, very, very nice. I didn't obviously talk about my channel because I was like, with my 40 so subscribers, you know, like, is nothing compared to his like 22,000 or whatever. It's kind of crazy. So yeah, that was really cool. And I'm going to try, and every time I meet, I'm going to try and see now PC Dev and Paige and Mr. Morrow is the next one, and also Super Infused. I quite like her too. But what I found with the vloggers, you know, is that obviously they come from an American perspective, whereas I'm coming from a very British perspective, which could be very different. And also, you know, I'm conscious that a lot of people who've been watching my videos are also, you know, they're Americans. Maybe you like my accent, but also, you know, like you know, the states in America are very different. You know, so if you come from New York, you come from Pennsylvania, it's very, very different. So, you know, what I'm experiencing might be similar to someone who's not from Florida, you know, someone who's from maybe Texas, you know, who's coming to Florida, you know, just, you know, it's new for me. It's new for you too, probably. So thank you for joining. I'm going to try and make this maybe every 2 weeks. I go through something maybe that I've learned, a tip or a trick. But for now, I'm going to wrap this up. I think I've been speaking long enough. I'm going to be out tomorrow with my other English friends, so watch out for a little piece on that. We're not sure what we're going to do yet. We might have a little walk around Baldwin Park and check that out, and I'll be able to show you like this area, which is really, I said, really great for, you know, yuppies, for, you know, young families. So yeah, stay tuned for that, and bye for now.